This is Jordan Poyer, safety for the Buffalo Bills, and you are now listening to Cover One Buffalo Podcast. Let's go.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo Podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, joined by my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, it's a Wednesday and we're getting ready for Saturday football. How does that feel?
That feels cool, but Christmas feels even cooler. We're only 9 days away from Christmas, baby. This game is going to be awesome. Saturday football's a little weird, though. It's all these short weeks, the Monday night game and then a Sunday night game keeping me up late, and now we're prepping pretty quick to turn around for a Saturday game. It still feels weird, man.
Yeah, there's a handful of Bills fans who are feeling hypocritical telling the Steelers people, like, 3 games in 12 days, stop complaining. And they're like, oh, the Bills are going to have to play 3 games in 12 days. That's I don't like that.
I don't love it.
So tonight's show is going to be brought to you by our friends at Uncle Jumbo's, presenting sponsor Uncle Jumbo's, and the first half of the show by our friends over at West Her. We'll get into some of their segments in a bit. But first, we're going to preview this Broncos-Bills game with our friends over at Mile High Huddle, Chad Jensen. Chad, how we doing?
Good, boys. I'm doing good. I can't complain. Really excited and looking forward to talking to you guys.
So before we dive in, tell the folks a little bit about your work at Mile High Huddle with SI and all the things they can look for from you.
Yeah, team website covering the Denver Broncos on the Sports Illustrated network, and we've been around for about 8 years doing this thing, and we got a nightly live stream podcast that we do, similar to probably what you boys do, and we go 7 days a week though, 1 hour every night, 6 p.m. Mountain to 7 p.m. and so, yeah, that's, it's a grind, right? The NFL is a 365 proposition, and that's why nuts like the three of us do what we do.
Absolutely. And I bless you for doing daily content. We got a couple friends that do daily, and I do have a great deal of respect for keeping that ship afloat. As we dive in here, I know that, Aaron and I were both on the same page as far as when we saw the schedule come out. The Broncos game, we're like, oh man, this is late in the year. They added a ton of talent. We love the Denver Broncos draft class. They're going to have time to gel and get together. And, obviously a little shine is off of the game, just plainly because of the injuries. Yeah, there's so many names that we were looking for at the beginning of the year that are now missing from this game. So as someone as close to the Broncos as what you are, tell us a little bit about your thoughts on the season, and then what kind of evaluation is the team looking at now of still making use of a season that certainly had higher hopes going in, and now you're having to make, decisions based on what would have happened if it was together versus what you can still take from it?
It was the optimism, I guess I'll quote John Elway. His end of season presser last year was with Drew Lock coming in, starting those final 5 games, going 4-1. He's like, we finally bounced off the bottom. And that was the general feeling, is that, all right, this is a team on the upswing, because Elway had a few bad draft classes in a row from about 2015 through 2017. But 2018, 2019, 2020, phenomenal draft classes. He knocked it out of the park, kind of turned over a new leaf as a GM, landed the guy they felt like could be their future franchise guy. And they went all in on him in terms of the offseason with their draft picks. I mean, taking Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler in their first 2 picks to open up the free agent dollars they spent mostly to support and bolster Locke. And so optimism was high. And then you bring in Pat Shurmur, who's had so much success with young quarterbacks at different points in his NFL career, a former, even though he's a 2-time head coach, failed 2-time head coach, but also a former assistant coach of the year. And then Fangio's defense. I mean, enough said. The big fly in the ointment, obviously, was the pandemic, which cut out about 1,600 offseason reps for all teams. But for teams like the Broncos, who had the combination of a new system and a young quarterback offensively, those are the teams that have really struggled to overcome the lack of offseason and those 1,600 reps. They've really come back to haunt them. Then you get to the doorstep of the regular season, Von Miller goes down. You're like, ooh, yikes. And that's quickly after that is Cortland Sutton, and then Jarrell Casey, then Mike Purcell, starting defensive tackle. I mean, A.J. Bouye is now gone for the year. The Broncos' top 3 corners done for the year. I mean, I could go. It's literally a comedy of injuries. That's how bad it's been. So I think the overall feeling internally in Denver is mulligan for everybody. There's so many unique mitigating factors that kind of have led to this 5-8 start that I think the team brass is more inclined to look at this as kind of a mulligan for Fangio and really just focus on utilizing what's left in this season as developmental reps to really give them momentum for 2021, where, they can expect to have some form of an OTAs where they're practicing on field, some form of a traditional training camp, and some form of preseason, and then really make the 2021 season, which is also the last year of John Elway's contract in the front office, kind of their hell or high water type of, all right, let's get it done.
Now, on that same breath, we've seen, not necessarily with the injuries, but we saw when the Bills went and took Josh Allen, this roster was incomplete. And it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't an injury thing. It was just an incomplete roster. And that team had a kind of rough season. They were eating some of that dead cap money to try to make this roster right. But sort of parallels that this young quarterback came into one of the worst offenses in the NFL history, and then it got slightly better over time. His stats kind of went in line with the talent around him. We're sort of seeing, and a lot of people are paralleling Drew Lock's sort of struggles over the last year, but with the highlights are there, and they're paralleling that with Josh Allen. Before we get into the whole, details about this offense and stuff, where is the fan base's pulse on, is this guy going to be the guy, and is next year it? Does he have next year to get everybody healthy and prove that he's the guy? Where is everybody on Drew Lock?
Good question. By the way, the reason I'm looking down, I'm not just checking my phone. I'm pulling up this meme that we shared on Instagram. That's a Josh Allen, Drew Lock comparison through their first, 12 starts. I think I'll get to that. But it's funny. Fans are going into last week against Carolina. All right. I think fans were pretty evenly split. A lot of fans have become very disillusioned with Drew Lock. They're just tired, because here's the problem is everyone can recognize the injury issues, the fact that there were no OTAs, it's a new scheme. And then Drew even injures his throwing shoulder in week 2, had to miss a few games. Fans that were kind of taking a negative approach going into last week, they could acknowledge all that. But the problem is they weren't even seeing a single step of progress from Drew. What they were seeing was the same old mistakes, game in, game out, over and over and over again. Instead of progression, they were seeing regression. And that was one of the unique aspects of Drew's rookie body of work, is that, it was definitely not mistake-free. He threw picks, there were problems, there were issues, but the preceding offensive coordinator, Rich Scangarello, and his quarterbacks coach did a phenomenal job making sure Lock did not repeat the mistake. And that was just not something fans saw this year with Shermer and his quarterbacks coaches, Mike Shula. And then the dam kind of broke last week, where everything started to click. And the analogy I used is that by missing those 1,600 reps, what you saw from the Broncos offense last week in what was week 14 in Carolina is probably about where they would have been if they would have had a traditional offseason and preseason, about the, week 4 mark of this season. You would have started seeing them really build momentum and start clicking, and Pat Shermer sharing a brain with Drew. But, that's not the way it shook out. And so you're seeing it very late in the season. And so there was a lot of fans that even after Drew produced that 4-touchdown performance in Carolina, I would say of that 50% of fans who going into the game were kind of disillusioned and ready to jump off, probably a quarter of those same fans are still going, well, prove it to me again. If Drew can go in and put up that volume against a good team, right? Because, of course, Carolina, they're 4-8. If you can go beat the Bills and put up that kind of volume, then we'll be believers. So it's one of those kind of, believe it when we see it type of things. But I think overall, Broncos fans, as a majority at this point, are now kind of relieved. They're like, okay, we saw a huge step forward. It wasn't just a modest step forward. Like, it was a powerhouse performance by Drew Lock last week. So I think right now, for the most part, it's an optimistic outlook.
We have been there a few times, of course. I hear that.
We know that roller coaster. And let's continue right along those ways, because I know as you look here, it's hard to find a offense that has the dichotomy that what Drew Lock has shown, and being able to have that in the difference of pressured and not pressured, the difference in being in favorable play action, positive sets and positive game script, versus when he's having to just drop back and the team knows that he's going to have to chuck it, and it's not 2nd and 3 where they can be off balance and it's 3rd and 8. The difference there in my mind is that running game. And what they've added with Melvin Gordon, that, had, I think, getting Garrett Bowles back this week, being able to have some of the positive steps there. That's one of the areas that we've been concerned with, is that teams can run on this Bills team. And I've said it a lot of times. It's more so when you build a modern pass defense with, 230-pound former safeties at linebacker and multiple 285-pound defensive tackles. You're daring teams that you don't have the discipline to keep running at us. And eventually we're going to get you into 3rd and long, and then we'll come and get you. And I'm curious, I don't know that I anticipate it with some of the injuries that are coming here, but if you're going to tell yourself a story of how the Broncos pull this game off, it's pounding the rock, getting Drew Lock into 2nd and short, not knowing if they're going to convert with Melvin Gordon or whether they're going to pull it out and try to take a shot over the top with play action. Is that the recipe for them the rest of this year and then expanding in the future? Or where have you seen glimpses outside of that from a play action standpoint, where obviously that's been a strength of his?
I mean, with Drew, the model was there last week, and that is that, one of the big signs of development that you saw from Drew in Carolina was that he was taking what the defense gave him and not going for broke on a snap-in, snap basis. And what happened is, when you take the check down and you dump it off and you make the short out throw and, you get to 2nd and 5, and all of a sudden, not only does it set you up in more favorable, as you're alluding to, down in different situations, but the defense secondary starts creeping up closer and closer to the line of scrimmage because you got the running game going. And then all of a sudden it opens up the deep shots. And Drew did a much better job, better than I've ever seen him yet as a pro, of kind of walking that line, of being smart enough to recognize, okay, I'm going to take that quick out. All right, 2nd and 7, here we go. All right, I'm going to take that quick crosser. All right, now we're at 3rd and 2. And then they run a power move on 3rd down and pull the left guard, and Melvin Gordon picks up 8. And just really start nickel and diming the defense to a point where they start kind of getting on their heels a little bit, and then it was over the top. That's the model. In a perfect world, that's what the Broncos want to do. They want to bolster Drew Lock with the running game, and it really changed. For those paying attention to the Broncos, their rushing attack kind of morphed from like a pretty 50-50 balance between zone blocking and power to straight up power, starting in that Dolphins game about a month ago. Well, three games ago.
We appreciate that game, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. But all of a sudden you're seeing guards pulling and, backs getting to the 2nd level on the edges. And it's actually been pretty fun to see it unfold. So I think you nailed it. That is the model. Establish the run. And then the second aspect of that, though, is Drew has to continue to show that game manager. Because, look, game manager gets thrown around like it's some kind of epithet, right, with regard to quarterbacks. Like, Kyle Orton was a game manager. That's why he couldn't make it in the league. The best quarterbacks in the game and the best quarterbacks all time are also the best game managers. That's just one of the boxes you have to be able to check to make it in this league. And that's just one of the things Drew, it seems like it might be simple and basic and mundane and elementary, but it was something that he really struggled to master up to this point. Last week was the first time we really saw that command where you saw he was in the zone, man, and he was managing the game with poise, taking what the defense gave him. His line that he likes to use in the quarterback room is, you can't go broke taking a profit. So, if we'll see if he can do that again. I'm a little bit skeptical in terms of, it could be an outlier type of a performance where the stars just perfectly align. But then again, if you look at his last 3 starts dating back to the Miami game, Miami, Kansas City, and then Carolina, it's been a steady progression. It wasn't just out of the blue, this production. He has been improving incrementally.
I know one of the areas that's the Bills have struggled with is when you have a physical presence at wide receiver, especially wide receiver 2, when you can isolate that against Levi Wallace, Josh Norman. So I know Tim Patrick is a concern for me. And then, coming into the game, I was curious, and I'll ask you for a health update on Noah Fant and what to expect there. But, it just seems like you guys keep throwing out more tight ends. I wasn't familiar with the work of Troy Fumagalli coming into last week. Nick Vanette, people like that to be able.
They're all the same shape and size too.
They just have big athletic guys who run fast. It's weird. I don't understand where they find them. But what are some of the ways that now, obviously, losing a specimen like Cortland Sutton and then bringing in Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler, who are much different there. That physical presence that you still need on the outside, how they work that in between Patrick and then the tight ends that were there planning to come into the year with Okabunum and then Fant versus what they've worked with the injuries and who's in and out.
Well, Patrick has straight up burdened. He's become right on the edge of a bona fide number 1 receiver in the league. He's a quintessential X receiver. He's a guy that can go up, as you say, he's very physical. He can out-muscle corners. My ball guy, go up and get it. He's also a very reliable possession guy. If you need to get the slant or the quick curl and move the chains, he's been very reliable in that sense, and it's been an eye-opener. I mean, he's always had good chemistry with Drew Lock because, when Drew was a rookie and Tim was, 4 or 5 on the depth chart, they spent a lot of time on second and third team thrown to each other. So they always had good chemistry, but I'd be lying to you if I were to say that I expected Tim Patrick now entering week 15 of this season to be the team's leading receiver in terms of yards, especially when they went heavy on the position in the draft with Judy and Hamler. So Patrick is that guy. Now he's going to be a restricted free agent in the spring. I think the Broncos tag him like second round tender, maybe give him permission to seek a trade, see what kind of interest is out there. Worst case scenario, they pay him $3 million on a tender to come back and be that fail safe to Cortland Sutton. But yeah, I mean, Noah Fant, he's back. He and Garrett Bowles both came down with some kind of 24-hour bug. The Broncos aren't sure if it was, food poisoning, some kind of 24-hour bug, but it was basically out of their system come Monday morning. They're good to go. They're both going to be on the field against the Bills. So you're going to see Fant, you're going to see Fumagalli, 9-finger Troy. He's only got 9 fingers. He was born with one missing finger.
He still catches better than Dawson Knox.
Right. So I don't know. They've, it's been, you can't judge the Broncos offense, both good and bad, completely by what they did in Carolina, because that was literally just the stars aligning in every perfect way offensively for this team. And they've been working towards that. So it's almost like the dam finally broke and, out come the great returns and the dividends everyone's been looking for. But yeah, it's been really interesting to see Tim Patrick emerge. Noah Fant, though, he's been one of the disappointments this year, not because of necessarily anything he's done, but because the coaches and Locke's up and down kind of performance all year long has really failed to maximize. I mean, Noah Fant, you put him in Kansas City, he's putting up bigger numbers than Travis Kelce. I mean, this is an elite athlete, phenomenal athlete, great receiver, and he's better blocker than he's given credit for. So I'm hoping they can work him more into the rotation in terms of the passing focus against the Bills.
Yeah, a lot of the Cover One Slack members were big Noah Fant, pounding the table for him in that draft. So we know a lot about him, unfortunately, going up against him this week. And I want to flip to the defensive side of the ball. I love Vic Fangio. First of all, I want to go out and say that my brother's a big Bears fan. Yeah, I know he was super sad to see him go with the talent they had on defense. So I was excited to kind of dig into this defense here this weekend because I do think Bills fans are a little bit too high on this being kind of a easy win to rail off 3 in a row here to end the season. I don't see it as an easy win. I think there's a chance they can walk away with a win in this game, but I think Fangio is going to cause Josh Allen a few problems and some of this stuff that he schemes up. Can you kind of tell our fans what Fangio is doing over there? What does he do to younger quarterbacks? I know Josh Allen's coming into his own this year, but he's still a younger quarterback that all you need to do is buy a second, right, of slowing down his processing time. What does Fangio scheme up in this defense that does that to quarterbacks?
Fangio, so the defensive coordinator, Wade Phillips, right, that helped the Broncos get over the hump in 2015 and win the Super Bowl against the Panthers. It's a similar ethos in terms of attack with the front seven, one gap, get upfield ASAP. But Phillips was all about man coverage. You live and die by the one-on-one matchups on the boundary and even over the middle. Whereas Fangio, that's what kind of separates him when you get to the second and third level of Fangio's defense compared to Phillips is he's much more inclined to play zone. It's not that he doesn't ever call man coverages, but he throws these different zone coverages at young quarterbacks, and it forces them to actually read the defense. That's one thing when a quarterback sees man, it might make some of the throws a little bit harder in terms of, you got to be a more accurate guy. But with zone, you actually have to read the field. You have to take the time, go through your progressions, find the soft spot in the zone, and make the completion. And that's just simply something Fangio has really excelled at throughout his career as a defensive coordinator in the league, but especially in Denver, is buying that front seven, the rush, just enough time to get home and get the sacks. Like if you look right now, Bradley Chubb leads the team with 7.5 sacks, and Malik Reed's like right behind him. They're 2 edge rushers this year without Vaughn. And I would guess, and I haven't actually tracked this myself, but of Bradley Chubb's 7.5 sacks, I would guess that 5.5 of those are actually coverage sacks. not him just blowing by his man or just straight up winning one-on-one and getting to the QB. It's basically the quarterback having nowhere to go, holding on to it for that beat too long, and boom, Chubb's there. And that's just something Fangio does a great job at. And the other thing to marvel at with Fangio is he's even without Jarrell Casey. So the Broncos starting defensive line, day one, week one this year was Shelby Harris, Mike Purcell, the nose, and then Jarrell Casey, the other defensive end. They were without either any of that trio on their D-line day one starters for 4 weeks because Shelby Harris had the bug. I don't like to say the CV. I'll just say, the virus. And he was gone for 4 weeks. For a long time, Fangio had to figure out how to get by without any of those studs up front. He managed to do it. Now, there have been a couple of games where opponents have been able to gash him on the ground, but they've been surprisingly adept at both stuffing the run and then forcing these young quarterbacks into some really touch and go situations on third down. Coverage does enough to where the rush is able to get there. So I think you're going to see that trend continue with Josh Allen. What concerns me with Josh is his ability to make plays off script, right? Just his ability to, throw away. I'm not even talking about the design power runs and all that. I'm saying just as a playmaker, backyard football guy with instincts and the arm to win, you get outside the pocket, you let him break contain, and it's a nightmare waiting to happen. And so I'm going to be really paying close attention to see if they can, kind of walk that line in terms of the pass rush of getting there, getting the pressure while also trying to keep contained and not let him break the pocket.
Absolutely. A couple kind of thoughts off that zone concept, because it is something that concerns me of, like I said, all you got to do is slow down Josh for a second, right? And then he has to break contain. He has to kind of get out, and he can make magic there. He can also get flustered doing some of that stuff in a game. So it's playing with fire a little bit. You guys are starting to get pretty dinged up in the third level of this defense as well here. Some good talent has gone down, but that type of disguising coverages really starts at the safety position. We know it here in Buffalo, right? Mm-hmm. Sean McDermott has made a living disguising coverages, especially against young quarterbacks. And it really starts with the safeties, of being able to move those safeties around and have excellent safety play so that if they don't get back into position right away, they can make up for it with their great play. I like to say here and pound the table that the Bills have maybe the best safety duo in the league, but I think there's a really good case here for the Broncos to be right there with them in terms of just great safety duo, and not only a good safety duo, but how much they mean to this defense in their ability to give you different looks. Can you touch on that a little bit?
I would agree. I would have agreed 100% with you. Last year, Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson were top 1, top 2, top 3 safety duo in the league. This year, though, Simmons has been surprised. He's playing on the franchise tag. He's been kind of up and down. He's gotten a lot more, I think, cachet and buzz and props. I think a little bit more than he deserves as far as his play on the field this year. Not to say he's been bad, but he just hasn't been as good as he was last year. But over the last 4 or 5 games, he and Jackson have kind of gotten their what together and started kind of vibing more like they looked in 2019. But look, Kareem Jackson, 33. I mean, he's the father time is taking its toll on him in coverage. He's just not. He's too often this year just a beat late. He's still that physical force in the box, and he rarely misses tackles, and he's a punishing hitter. But you're right about the coverages, and those 2 safeties give the Broncos and give Fangio. I mean, that's the linchpin to giving Fangio some of the freedom to throw different things at quarterbacks and not feel like he's completely exposing his corners and especially the lack of athleticism over the middle with the off-ball linebackers, Alexander Johnson and Josie Jewell. But, man, listen to this. Cornerbacks, all right? The Broncos opened this season with A.J. Bouye, Bryce Callahan, and Michael Ojemudia as the rookie third-rounder as their top 3 corners. Then you had Asang Bassi, an undrafted rookie that has really blossomed into like the ideal, perfect Fangio nickel. And then you had Devontae Harris, Devontae Bosby. I'm missing one, but nevertheless –
Duke Dawson, was he?
Yeah. Thank you, Duke Dawson. And then they even brought in Kevin Tolliver from Chicago. Let me tell you how many of those names I just mentioned are still on the field and available. Devontae Bosby, Ojemudia, that's it. Everyone else is either on injured reserve or in Bouye's case, he's just got handed that 6-game suspension, so he's serving the final 4 games on that. He'll have to serve 2 next year. And so the Broncos have really had to go back to, dig through the scrap heap to whatever's like buried in the earth. That's where they've gone for corner. They just brought in Nate Hairston. They just brought in another kid, Motley. they're just scraping the bottom of the barrel. But one of the things that they got fortunate 2 weeks ago, and they finally got to play him last week because, you got to wait the 6 days before you got to do the testing when you bring someone in, then wait 6 days until they can let them in the building. But the Philadelphia Eagles cut Will Parks, and the Broncos put in the claim and were awarded him on waivers. And this was a guy that, frankly, they should never have let go last year, but they did. He went out, signed a 1-year deal, $1.5 million with the Eagles, and it just didn't work out. In Philadelphia, they cut him, and he was just a revelation for Fangio last week because he fit right back in to that same role that he had last year, which was kind of that third safety. They can play a little dime backer. He can play safety in terms of, the traditional safety responsibilities in terms of coverage. Also a little nickel. And he did that. And he had a few nice blitzes, one of which he was able to get home and sack Teddy Bridgewater for a 16-yard loss. So I'm kind of running a little bit long-winded here, but Fangio's been able to make some true lemonade out of the lemons that he's been served, especially, the whole defense has been decimated. About the only unit that hasn't been hurt, I won't even say that. They lost their 5th-round rookie, Justin Sternad, for the season in training camp, but I was going to say their linebackers are about the only ones that have been unscathed. They're off-ball guys, but Fangio really has been like the little Dutch boy with his finger in the dike. Plugs one hole and another one springs open. It's just been 1 week after another. Someone goes on IR.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how they approach it. So before we get you out of here, what kind of game are you expecting this weekend? Give us a prediction.
It's crazy, man. I talk about this a lot on my podcast because, listeners want a definite. They want a bold prediction. They want a lock. Give us the guarantee. And I'll tell you, this is a team that even with Drew Lock, you just don't know what you're going to get on a week in and week out basis. And in this case, though, the offense, as I've mentioned a couple times, they've shown incremental, steady progress now dating back to the Miami game. So I'm inclined to say that the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior in this case, and assume that even though the Buffalo Bills have a really good defense and excellent players, I think you're going to see the Drew Lock continue to kind of vibe. Now, is he going to be powerhouse Drew like you saw in Carolina? I don't think so. I don't think you're going to see that kind of prolific outpouring of production, but I think you're going to see continued improved solid play from Drew. You're going to see the Broncos really try and implement their running game, starting with Melvin Gordon. One thing to keep in mind is Philip Lindsay, they thought he suffered a season-ending knee in that New Orleans game where they played without a quarterback. They thought that game he suffered season-ending knee injury. Turned out, fortunately, to not be that, but it was a severe knee. He ended up playing the next week, and he's not missed a game since the New Orleans game, but he's not been the same player. He's missing that twitch, that pop, that explosion. He's just been oddly a plotter back there. So I'm wondering, is this the game where you see the real Phil back? Because if you get the real Phil back, talk about a change of pace. It just goes above and beyond that. There have been some games this season where, and it's only been a handful where they've been able to have both Melvin and Phil healthy on the field together, where, it's the ground and pound, grind it out with Melvin, and then bring in Philip for a series or two for a change of pace, and he busts one for 63 so I think you're going to see Philip probably produce better in this game than he has the last couple, just because his knee, I think, is steadily getting better. But I expect this to be a hard-fought game. I think it's going to come down to the wire this time around, unlike last year where it was Brandon Allen and the prevailing winds in Buffalo. I think this is going to be a tight game. I'm probably going to pick the Bills in terms of making my pick, and I think it's going to be something like 23-20, something like that. Bills edge them out, but it's going to be hard-fought where, for Broncos fans, they can go, look, moral victory. We took it down to the wire with one of the better teams in the league, and Drew wasn't the reason we lost. He was one of the reasons why we were able to compete and take it down to the wire.
Love it. Let the folks know again where to find your work.
Yeah, just check out milehighhuddle.com. We're covering Denver Broncos all day long. Our big thing, probably our claim to fame, one of the things that we were able to build on over the years is what we do draft-wise from January. Even all season long, we're doing stuff with the draft, even during the football season, but draft stuff that Broncos might not be your thing, your Bills guys, but draft, the stuff we do with our draft analysts is top notch. So just check out milehighhuddle.com or check out the Huddle Up podcast on Apple or YouTube.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Chad. Hoping for a fun game this weekend.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. It was great talking with you. Hey, anytime you want to meet up and talk shop, I'm down. So thanks for the invite. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
So I think he's right on. I think that this is going to be a tougher, closer game than what a lot of fans are thinking. And it's going to be interesting to see how we go about that when I think, the injuries are rough. I don't think there's much chance that the Broncos are going to slow down the Bills' offense. And eventually I think that's going to be too much for them. But I am worried about some of the matchups. The fact that they're a good run game and have good play action and then have some physical specimens in the receiving core that isn't our best, our best kind of matchup. I'm worried we might give up some more points than what people are expecting.
Maybe. I think this one's a tough one for me. I think this could go two ways. This could be that type of closer game than expected. I think a lot of fans, what I've been hearing is people saying that this is going to be a trap game. I don't think that Sean McDermott's going to allow
I don't think Sean McDermott is capable of getting trapped.
Yeah, they might play harder and it be a closer game than people think, but I also think the NFL is just that way. There's so much parity that even a team with 4 wins can play you really solid. We saw them go to the wire with Kansas City. Like we've seen them play with Miami. Like they can play with good teams. We know that. Yeah. I think the benefit right now to this Bills defense is, one, they've been better in stopping the run here this year and against better backs. I like this backfield. I think they can do some good things. I think they'll get some work going in this game. The way you offset that is jump out to an early lead. Yeah. Josh Allen and the Bills can put up points the way we've seen them do it this year. They can jump out to an early lead and really offset that and put so much pressure on Locke. And what I think also the Bills can do now with this kind of new look scheme that we're seeing out of Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier is generate some pressure against Locke. And I think you get to him. And Levi Wallace is going to give up some receptions in this game. He's going to get big bodies.
Tim Patrick's going to have a good game.
That's fine. As long as he's not giving up the huge plays and he's tackling, they can move the ball on the Bills. That's okay. If it takes them a long time to move the balls and they're not getting the shot plays and the explosive plays, I'm okay with that. I can live in that range. I think it's going to be tough to get safety help over there with Noah Fant back. Yeah. I think they're going to see a lot of safety help in there. I think if Matt Milano's playing more snaps, that will help maybe alleviate some of the safety help and be able to bring some more help over to Levi. But I just think this Bills defense has too much depth. I think that they can get in pressures on Locke, and Sean McDermott he's not at that Belichick level, but I think he's at that Fangio level of giving the younger quarterbacks too much to process and making them kind of look silly at times. I think that he's going to give Drew Lock some looks that he hasn't seen and confuse him post snap to where he's making some of the plays that we've seen in the past. I think the Bills will be able to pretty easily keep this one at arm's length here throughout the day, but it could get annoyingly close. The Bills have done that all year.
So Jason makes a great point here that I think a lot of fans are so used to what this old team used to be. And when I say fans, I even mean non-Bills fans. No, I mean outside of Bills Mafia. Because Chad's a really informed guy and knows the Broncos really well and knows the Bills, but isn't as intimately familiar as what's happened this year. It's easy to think of that 23 points as pretty good, whereas the Bills average 30 points. I will be shocked with this secondary as dinged up as it is if they hold the Bills under 30 points. And that's what I think the difference is going to be. Is I think the Broncos are going to score annoyingly more than what we'd like, but the Bills are just going to pull away because there's no way that this secondary can guard Beasley, Diggs, and if we see Brown playing in this game.
And even if we don't see Brown, I think Davis has done enough. And we were talking off air. I know fans are super frustrated with Dawson and Knox, but him just being on the field and presenting an
the athletic threat
person that can stretch that seam and do some things to pull safeties out of the box and give Beasley some space to work or give Stephon Diggs some space to work. You still have to account for him, even if you don't. If fans are going to joke that, if you throw it to him, he won't even catch it. The defensive coordinators don't assume that, right?
They cannot take that risk. They cannot actually be like, it's fine, just let him try to catch.
Yes, it's not. So he still presents some challenges, and you brought up a great point. That's probably why he's getting those reps, because he does cause you to really pay attention to him. But when we were talking about their defense and the zone looks and stuff like that, in my mind, I was just thinking, what an opportunity game for Cole Beasley to just have another career type game. Yeah. If they're going to go into some zones all day, I trust the relationship with Stephon Diggs too. I think that's a given, but I trust this relationship with him, Beasley, Josh Allen, that if a play breaks down, these guys are going to find these soft spots in these zones, and they're going to find it quick. There's nothing Cole Beasley hasn't seen at this point. There's nothing that Stephon Diggs hasn't seen at this point. If they get zones, they're going to find these soft spots. And I do trust that Allen, even if this processing is a little slow, that he'll be able to extend a play and get the ball to these guys. I think they're going to be able to move the ball. I really think if Denver's going to stay in this game, dude, it's going to be Josh throwing some of those double coverage balls that just go the other way. They're going to have to come up with some of the toxic differential plays. They're going to have to steal possessions away from the Bills.
Hamler's going to have to break one.
Yes.
Philip Lindsay's going to have to break one. They're going to have to get a turnover. It's going to have to be that kind of game.
They'll have to probably get multiple. I think they have to steal probably 2 to 3 possessions from the Bills, I think, because I never really have said this out loud, but I think that the way the Bills score, this is the way we talked about playing against Kansas City, that if our Bills are going to win, they have to steal a number of possessions in order to do that, because you have to keep pace. The Bills are that team to the Broncos, I think, right now.
Yeah, it's so foreign. I was joining another show, the opposite direction, previewing Bills Broncos with the Broncos team, and it was weird to say, I've never said this in 20 years, but you now have to scheme how to keep the Bills offense off the field. And it's such a foreign feeling to feel that way. And one of the reasons is because of a player we want to spotlight here, and that's John Brown. So obviously we saw a weird stretch early in the year with calf and knee and ankle, and then that really odd injury, 4 weeks ago now, that kind of landed weird, and he tried to play a little bit at the end of the game. But now has gone through the IR designation, has missed his required 3 games, and the team designated him to return. What fans need to make sure to understand is that means they opened the 21-day window. They have 21 days to bring him back. He did start practicing. I saw some video clips, and he looked good. He looked like he was moving well. For anyone who's not aware, John Brown does carry the sickle cell trait. Obviously, many people here that reported. I don't believe it's to the degree, I believe Ryan Clark was always the Steelers player you would hear about it, that wouldn't even travel with the team there because of how dangerous it was for him in altitude. To go through that, but being able to...
Didn't Goodwin have that too?
Correct. So obviously it's something that they have to be conscious of. I'm not aware of the degree for John Brown, and if in his previous stops in Arizona and things like that, or Baltimore, if they avoided that game or if he wasn't able to. I'm not aware of that for him, but it's a factor. It's something they need to be aware of. So I don't know that that's a reason he does or does not play this week, but it's not automatic that he's back this week. He's eligible to be back this week. I believe we will find that out by end of the afternoon Friday. Although I know before Sal had confirmed, even on the Monday night game, they were able to bring back Milano that afternoon. So it's possible we might not find out until noon on Saturday. I don't know what the timeline is for a 4:30 game. So sometime late in the week, we probably won't know about John Brown. If he's back, what are some of the things that you think that opens up for this offense?
Everything. I think it gives them that true. They're not really using Stephon Diggs in the ways that the Vikings used him, which was just send Diggs straight down the field, send him on those go routes. That's going to be John Brown is kind of stretching that safety play that we talked about and opening up those zones for Stephon Diggs, for Cole Beasley, and even Dawson Knox. I think he just gives them that speed threat. And whether or not Gabriel Davis is, I think there's been a lot of conversations I've seen on Twitter of, do they move on from John Brown? And I'm not in that camp yet. I think even if Gabriel Davis is showing Bills fans things, I think the NFL respects John Brown right now in a different manner than they respect Gabriel Davis's game. I think they're both respected, but I think Vic Fangio, if John Brown's out there, they're accounting for him in a different way than they're accounting for Gabriel Davis. And I think that changes things for this offense. And we've seen it. They have played well without him lately, but I don't know that doesn't mean that they won't be better with him. I'm in favor of sitting him for this game, whether or not there was health issues anyway. I'm more interested in the idea of making that clock start ticking, getting him back to practice, letting him get a few weeks of practice. I'd be fine if he does play. You, I think, mentioned it in our post game of doing something similar to Milano, limited
10
snap
15
count.
snaps.
Yeah, shot call plays where we know we want to take a shot on a second and short or something like that, and he just comes in for stuff like that. But I'm fine with him really kind of ramping up to the playoffs. He's a luxury. at this point. We have a kind of an embarrassment of treasures at the position, and I'm totally cool with him just being a luxury that we get back as we head into the postseason. I'd like him to get a game or two, but I don't need him to come back right now. But one more thing on the injury and the sickle cell stuff. I trust this training staff and our sports science department at One Bills Drive explicitly. Like I have nothing but faith in them to do the right thing by the players and to get, if they don't feel comfortable, I'm totally cool with that. If they do feel comfortable when he plays, I'm also not going to I'm not going to second guess that. They run the numbers, they know how he feels, and they're not going to waste him for the playoffs. Not that this game doesn't matter, and Sean McDermott will tell you, man, but they're not going to put him out there they want him back for this stretch run.
100%. They're not going to risk it. They're not going to push the envelope if they're 100% sure that he's back and ready and that there's no risk with the sickle cell trait that they can bring him back, then he'll play. And if he's out there playing, I'm going to feel good that he's there. I still wouldn't mind a limited rep count, but I'll feel good that he's out there. If he's not, I'll trust that it's for the right reasons. And again, this is not a gimme game. This is not something they can afford to take lightly and not try to win the game. Of course, they're going all out, and I expect them to win with or without John Brown. But he could really open things up.
Yeah, and we still want this to be the Isaiah McKenzie revenge game. We don't want John Brown to take away from that, right?
It's critical. It's critical to be able to show them everything that they missed.
Right.
And it's something that we need to make sure that we're taking a look at in the way that we approach some of the things that we're looking at here. Our friends over at T-Shirt University and our T-Shirt University Fresh Look. It's something that the question actually came up in the chat here about Taron Johnson. And I think Freshly was asking about it here. Your man looked fantastic. Prettiest playing football. It was a fantastic call for that. And it looked so nice when he sat on that route. For anyone who didn't catch it, he did leave that game with a concussion. Anytime that happens, it's concerning. You compound that with a short week where you only have 6 days. I honestly assumed that he was not going to be able to play. So when the practice report came out yesterday that he was listed as limited, talking with our friend Kyle over at Banged Up Bills, that does mean that he's already progressed through several layers of the concussion protocol to be listed as limited. As an example, the game coming out of the game for Mitch Morris, he was listed as a DNP, did not practice. He missed that game, ended up missing multiple games. So already being listed as limited, meaning that he participated in the walkthrough, means that the NFL has allowed him
to put a helmet on and walk around with the team, right?
Yeah, which sounds silly, but is that's a step. That's a further step in the progression. So I would say right now it's not close enough that I'm ready to project that he is or is not going to play, but I can say with certainty it's possible he will play this weekend. Again, I would be okay if they erred on the side of caution and gave him an extra week to make sure and just bring him back, because we're going to go from a Saturday to a Monday, so we're going to get a weird 9-day trip in between the next two games, going from the Saturday night game in Denver to the Monday night game against New England. We're going to have a little bit of extra rest there. So for John Brown or Taron Johnson, similar thing. So for our T-Shirt University Fresh Look, it's going to be making sure that they're doing the right thing by Taron, because his progression and play over the last couple weeks is critical to this team making a run.
Yeah, he's a tackling machine. And here's my thing, man. If he clears protocol and can play him. Like, I don't know that there's any benefit to once they're pretty strict on these rules, that once he's cleared that protocol, there's no more risk of further concussion or onset
by their structure.
So, and these are guys that know way more about brains than I'll ever know. So I trust them. And if he clears these protocols, I'm totally confident with him being able to go out and play. And in a game like this, where we talk about what are some of the fears of this Bills defense versus this Broncos offense, is that run game. And I know you joke around about Taron Johnson being that great linebacker, but he's really his run fits in this scheme are so important. And Sean McDermott said it in that post game, how Taron, Tremaine Edmonds, Klein, or Matt Milano sort of play on a rope together, and that allows them to stay in that nickel and still be stout in the run game. And I like Sierra Neal. I like Dean Marlowe. They don't quite hit those run fits in the same way that we see from Taron Johnson. So if he can go, man, I don't need the rest. Let's go full go, because I think he's needed in a matchup like this where the run game is so important.
Well, and it's the instincts. And I do joke about him being a linebacker, but it's because his instincts in the run game and sniffing out screens are just phenomenal. Like, that's stuff that you can't coach. He reads it well and then throws his little body in there, like Antoine Winfield. I always used to compare him to what you would feel there. And, you know, everybody saw the steps back earlier this season, but just like with AJ Klein, with Levi Wallace, sticking by these players and watching them come forward is a critical part of the success we need.
And how crazy is that if you would have told me like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, that Taron Johnson's injured, people would have been like, good, let's see somebody else. Now he's injured and might not possibly play. I bet there's people on Twitter that were saying good, that are worried that he will not play.
100%. I know I could name a couple of them right now. So as we get in here, I thought this was a good opportunity. So our friends over at West Her, if you're looking for a vehicle in Western New York, please find them 23 dealerships, the largest auto group in New York State. They could find you with a full range of vehicles for anything that you're looking for. I thought this was a good opportunity. You know, when you're looking to get down to brass tacks and ready to buy that car, you want to talk numbers. I want to caution some fans that have thrown around some of the metrics for Denver. That stretch where they had to pull out Drew Lock, and then the weird game where the NFL forced them to literally play without a quarterback, it skewed the crap out of their metrics. And if you isolate the games with Drew Lock, he's not great. He's a confounding young quarterback. He is rookie year Josh Allen to me. So, you know, he might hit that Jacksonville bomb and really make you excited, but he's going to throw the ball to the other team.
Or have that Miami game.
There's going to be exciting ones like Josh had every time he plays Miami. But it's not as bad as what the metrics are, because there are metrics out there that tell you they're the 32nd offense in the NFL, and they're not. They're not good, but they're not the worst offense in the NFL, and it's skewed by those. So it's just a good reminder to take some of those metrics in context, the same way we talk about the Bills. The Bills defense, they're playing better than what their metrics are because it's skewed by some early season injuries and some early season bad defense with bad tackling and bad reads, and they're playing better than that now. I would say I don't think the Broncos offense is as good as what we saw against Carolina, because, you know, Drew Lock was 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, like 5 incompletions total. His best game of his career, probably. They're not that good, but they're better than the metrics that show 32nd in the league.
Yeah, and Carolina has its own issue. I've seen a few games now and watching other opponent, and they're a little suspect. They'll eventually be good again. But that also sort of goes to the defensive numbers. I think that it also hurts the defensive numbers, and their numbers are pretty good when you look at some of their defensive numbers. So I do think their defense is probably, and the scheme is probably better, and that's been my concern all week. You know that I've told you a few times. Like, if Fangio can scheme up some things that cause Josh some confusion, get him to throw into some spots that he shouldn't, that's their way to win this game, is to get Josh off of his game, confuse him a little bit, make him pull the trigger in a spot he shouldn't, and generate those extra possessions. That's how they're going to do it. But I agree. And this is a great point, Greg, because this is something that in Slack channel with some of the analytics guys in the past, and even on Twitter, that my biggest argument when we're looking at these big analytical dives in the numbers is totally lacking context, right? Like, if you have a game where there's no quarterback, that's 1/16.
Yeah, the NFL's a small sample size league. It's easy to skew it.
Correct. And throw in weather into some of these games. Yeah. Like, I always point to the Colts Bills snow game. Like, how do you account for that weather in the total analytics for the season? Like, it does matter. It's a 16th of the sample size. So I do like analytics. I use a lot of it. I have a bunch of numbers written down every week to kind of go over and watch film. But I think this is a great point for the people that just, they either look at NFL overall stats when they're going into a game, stats, yeah, or just look at DVOA. Like, it doesn't tell you. You got to go back and look at games, because you're right. They're not the worst offense in the NFL. I think they're probably in the 20s still.
Yeah, they're not good. I'm not trying to make the case they're good. They're just not the worst.
Yeah, they aren't the worst. And I do think a lot of people, and it's not just fans, it's kind of people that do all this stuff. I think a lot of people get caught up when they look at the numbers, they look at the PFF grades, and they think, oh, yeah, this guy's good, this team's good, but there's so much. You really have to put film and numbers together to get that full picture and get the context.
Yeah. Appreciate our man Lee, always there with us in the Slack channel. Appreciate you. Very generous of you.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm gonna put you on the spot here. What are we gonna see on Saturday?
I almost picked higher of a. Well, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm all jazzed out. It might be the eggnog. It might be the Christmas spirit and all the music. I'm feeling really good. I'm gonna go with 29-19. Bills win. I think it's probably even a wider margin at a point, and they get a late touchdown. But I think Josh Allen, something's clicked over the last month with Josh Allen, seeing everything that he's seeing. He's seeing defenses. He's the comfort with Stephon Diggs, the comfort with Cole Beasley. I think it's just too much for a banged up team, even with a good scheme. I think they'll cause some problems at times, but I think for the most part, Josh Allen's going to be able to impose his will. I think a lot of people do look at these statistics and say, hey, this is a good opportunity to get the ground game going. I look at this and think it's a good opportunity to just spread it out and get Beasley eating and just keep those chains moving, get up to an early lead, eliminate their ability to get the run game going by, getting a 2-possession lead right out of the gate, and just maintain it. Maintain a 2-possession lead for the whole game. Let's have some fun and roll into Christmas having a blast.
Our man Jason's here's on fire tonight. Bold prediction: Tyler Bass hits a 60-yarder up in the elevation, up in the mountains there. That's absolutely in play in a game like this. And honestly, one of those situations that you'd be kidding yourself if McDermott and Heath Farwell wouldn't kind of like to have him take a stab at one of those in that perfect situation. So I'm in the same spot. This game, maybe short of the Jets game or something like that, I will be confounded if they don't win this game. The injuries in their secondary with our receiving core is the worst possible scenario for their defense. I respect Vic Fangio. I don't think Fangio is going to let up 50 points or something crazy like that. I expect this to be one of those games that people are talking about in Vegas. The Bills are 6.5, 7.5 point favorites, depending on where you're at. I think late in the game, it's 31-15, and they've had a handful of field goals, 31-16, something like that. And they score a late touchdown, and then you get into the analytics of do you go for 2 early or not, and that 2-point conversion is going to be whether they cover or not, and it's going to be one of those fun kind of things because I think Vegas is right. I think that they're a touchdown plus favorite even on the road, and I just don't see how this team can slow down the Bills' offense. I think they might score some annoying points. I think Hamler could get loose for one. I think Tim Patrick could muscle a guy in the red zone and come down with a touchdown. I think they'll score a couple points, and we've shown a propensity to ease up late in games and give up some garbage time stats. It's happened over and over again, so I don't think this is the game that stops. I also think we pick off Drew Lock once or twice. I think we sack him a couple times. And I think that the Bills end up pulling out. I'll say that we finally stop a 2-point conversion and that we end up going 31-22 and we cover by 9.
I like it, man. Any given Sunday, right? So, I will be, if we do the post-game show and it's a loss, I'm going to be pretty devastated. The world's not going to burn to the ground, right? I would like to just get this division championship off the backs of the Bills. I think that's probably been the message. That's the season goal. You hear it in the press conferences every single week. Josh Allen's been talking about it. If this team is who we think they are, you have this goal. It's in your destiny. Other teams can do some other stuff on Sunday and you can still get to that area. But you have the opportunity to take it. It's your destiny. It's a short week. That's not an excuse. This team's beat up. So that doesn't matter. Go out, take this W, clinch that AFC East, celebrate that, and then let's end the streak, win 2 more games. So
That's right.
they're talking big talk in this building. Tremaine Edmonds talked about, like that win's cool, but we have these bigger goals. If your bigger goals are Super Bowl, you got to beat the Denver Broncos. Like you got to beat a banged up team, and you got to do it decisively. Like, so I'm measuring this team by a different standard. You got to come out here, win this game decisively, win by 2 possessions, get out of there with the AFC championship or AFC East championship.
A couple guys, I wish I could find the comment here in the chat, but a couple people have brought it up. If you wanted to nitpick Sean McDermott early in his career and even earlier this season about not beating bigger teams, I think he's overcome that now, and we've gotten past that. One thing you can count on is Sean McDermott does not lose games he's supposed to win. Like, the Bills do not drop the easy games. They don't
play
lose
down to your opponent.
Yeah, they sometimes they play down to them, but they win.
Yeah.
This year they've won that. So we're coming off 3 straight double-digit wins, 3 straight primetime national TV type wins in scenarios, and I think this is a game they win comfortably, and I think that it's going to be a fun game. I'm actually going to be back at home in Western New York with my family on Saturday, so going back there to do some early Christmas as we're kind of strategizing how to pace out all the different things. So bringing back some of our early things, we're going to do our post-game show. I'm going to be in a hotel. I'm going to be doing the show live from a hotel somewhere in Western New York.
Just like back in the day.
Yeah, it's going to be weird. I think I'm excited. We'll see how it goes. But I am looking forward. I get to watch the game with my family. So I am looking forward to that and watching a game with a local broadcast and all the kind of fun stuff that goes along with that. And looking forward to being able to see my grandparents and all my family and watch the game together with them.
That's awesome. And I'm looking forward to... I wasn't looking forward to the Saturday game. I hate any interruptions to my habits and all that stuff. But then the next day, we're going to make a bunch of sugar cookies and decorate them and watch other football games that don't matter to me. And hopefully we've got the division locked up and I can just put Red Zone on and listen to Christmas music and just have a good Christmas celebration about the Bills. And I'll make some Bills Christmas cookies for everybody.
I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to get mine.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, appreciate it here. Aaron, tell the people where they can find you with all your Christmas cheer.
Yeah, man, you can find me at Aaron Quinn 716 and in the Cover One Slack channel.
Come and find me on Twitter at Greg Tompsett, GregTompsett. Having a good time. Thank you from our friends at Uncle Jumbo's, from T-Shirt University, from West Her. On behalf of Aaron Quinn and Greg Tompsett, you have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.